It was a Tuesday morning like any other, the kind where you don't expect your life to shift even a fraction. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when I remembered I hadn't checked the mailbox in 2 days, so I slipped on my sneakers, still in my pajama shirt, and wandered down the driveway. Bills, a grocery flyer, a postcard from the hardware store, and then, sitting right there on top like it owned the place, was my wallet. The same brown leather wallet I'd lost over a month ago. I froze, staring at it as if it might vanish if I blinked. I'd torn apart my house looking for this thing, called every store I'd been to, even replaced my driver's license and credit cards. I'd written off the $50 in cash as gone forever. But here it was, edges a little scuffed, but otherwise exactly as I remembered, except for one thing. Tucked inside was a folded scrap of paper. I opened it, my hands already shaking, and read 5 words written in careful block letters. You dropped this when you needed it most. Pay it forward. That was it. No name, no phone number, no explanation. The cash was still there. Every card, every crumpled receipt. I stood in my driveway holding it, coffee cooling in my other hand, wondering who would go to that trouble, and why. I took the wallet inside and did what people do now when anything strange happens. I made a list. If the note was slipped into my mailbox without a stamp, it had to be local. The careful block letters looked like someone who taught themselves neatness late in life. The lines were straight but a little heavy on the downstrokes. The paper was the kind you tear from a small spiral notepad, the perforations still fuzzy. The phrase, "when you needed it most," stuck to my ribs because the day I lost it was the same day I'd come home from a job interview that went nowhere and a pharmacy run that cost more than I wanted to admit. I started with the mail carrier, Marisol, who knows everyone's dog by name, and asked if she'd put it in. She shook her head and smiled like a person with a theory. "Not me, honey. But I've seen Mr. Whitaker straighten crooked mailboxes and put lids on people's trash cans when the wind kicks up. He walks the block at dawn." I knew the house, white clapboard, flag on the porch, the yard with those little flamingo wind spinners that make kids laugh. I retraced my steps from the day I lost it: hardware store, pharmacy, the cafe with the chalkboard sign that always gets me, and asked if anyone had seen a brown wallet. The hardware kid shrugged, the barista said no, but the pharmacy tech, ponytail, efficient, said, "We had a wallet turned in, but the gentleman said he knew the owner and would get it back to him." I asked for a name. He just tapped the license and said, "He lives 3 blocks from me. I used to carry mail. I'll handle it." She described him without needing to check the memory. Cap Kane, kind eyes, the kind of person you don't argue with about kindness. By the time I got home it was a little after 11, a perfect sun for a walk kind of hour, so I put the wallet in my pocket where it belonged and headed toward the white house on the corner. The porch steps creaked like they'd been greeting the same pair of feet for 40 years. I knocked, and after a long moment a man in a blue baseball cap opened the door with the cautious curiosity of someone who expects salesmen but hopes for neighbors. Late 70s maybe, tall in the way tall men are, even when they lean on a cane. "Mr. Whitaker?" I asked, suddenly unsure of what I'd say next. He looked at me for a second, then at the outline of the wallet in my pocket, and a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You found your way home," he said, and I realized he wasn't talking about the wallet. I held up the note. "Was this you?" He nodded like we were finishing a conversation we hadn't started yet. "Used to be a mailman," he said, tapping the cap brim with 2 fingers. "When you carry folks' lives up to their doors every day, you get good at returning what matters." He opened the door wider without asking another question. "Come on in, son. Coffee's hot, and I've got a story about the first time I lost my wallet and what it taught me about owing people and owing the world." His kitchen was the kind you don't see much anymore: faded yellow curtains, a table with a few dents in the wood, and a coffee pot that looked like it had been brewing since the Carter administration. He poured 2 mugs without asking how I took mine and slid one across the table. "You ever notice," he began, "how the things we lose have a way of telling us who we really are?" He sipped, eyes narrowing slightly, not at me, but at the memory. "I was 24 when I lost my first wallet. It had everything: paycheck, license, picture of my high school sweetheart. I was working in the post office by then, and when I realized it was gone, I felt hollow, like the world had taken one look at me and decided I didn't deserve to keep anything. He leaned back in his chair, letting the steam curl between us. 3 days later, it showed up in my mailbox. No note. Nothing missing. Just back. I never found out who returned it. And I thought if I ever get the chance to be that person for someone else, I will. I turned the note from my wallet over in my hand. So that's what this was. Paying it forward? He smiled. Exactly. You looked like you'd had one of those weeks when you dropped it, head down, shoulders tight. I figured you might need a reminder that not all losses are permanent. I told him about the day I'd lost it, the job interview, the prescriptions, the walk home in the rain where I didn't notice my pocket was lighter until hours later. We talked about work, about small towns, about how neighbors used to know each other's names without needing a Facebook group. Somewhere in that conversation, I realized I wasn't just talking to the man who returned my wallet. I was talking to someone who understood what it meant to look out for people without making a show of it. Before I left, he pointed a finger at me, not accusing, just certain. Don't let that note sit in your wallet forever, he said. When the moment comes, you'll know. You'll see someone who needs a piece of their faith restored. And you'll hand it to them without making them feel like they owe you. I promised I would. And as I walked home, wallet snug in my pocket, I felt something I hadn't expected, like I'd been handed more than I'd lost. The next time I saw Mr. Whitaker, it wasn't planned. I was carrying 2 grocery bags up my driveway when I heard, "You're holding those wrong." I turned, and there he was, leaning on his cane at the edge of the sidewalk like he'd been waiting for me to notice. "All the weight's in your fingers. You'll hate yourself by the time you get inside." Before I could argue, he took one bag, lighter than I thought, and followed me to my door. "See? Balance," he said, handing it back. That became our first unspoken agreement. If he saw me struggling with anything heavy, he'd help carry it halfway, no matter how unnecessary it was, and I'd pretend I couldn't manage without him. A week later, I spotted him in his yard wrestling with a stubborn hose nozzle. I walked over and fixed it in under a minute, which earned me a mug of coffee and a slice of lemon pound cake his daughter had dropped off. He started telling me about his years as a mailman, all the strange things people tried to ship, the dogs he befriended, the kids who grew up on his route. "You'd be surprised," he said, "how much of a person's life you can piece together from what they get in the mail." Soon we had a rhythm. I'd stop by on Saturday mornings with bagels from the bakery, and he'd meet me on Tuesday evenings to walk the block, his cane tapping in time with our steps. We talked about little things, the weather, sports, what the high school marching band was playing that week. But underneath, there was something else, an understanding that our worlds had been pretty quiet before we bumped into each other. One afternoon in late spring, he invited me into his garage to see something worth keeping. It was an old workbench covered in neatly labeled jars of screws, nails, bolts, decades of order in glass. "Every time you save something useful, you're saving yourself a trip to the store," he said. Then he handed me a jar of assorted washers. "You'll need these one day. Don't ask when. You'll know." It wasn't just advice about hardware. It was the same kind of quiet wisdom that came with the note in my wallet. Hold on to what matters, because it has a way of maturing more later. It was a rainy Thursday in late October when I saw her, a woman in her mid-30s, standing under the awning of the bus stop across from the grocery store, digging frantically through her bag. I'd just stepped out with a carton of milk when she pulled everything out onto the bench: phone, notebook, makeup pouch, no wallet. Her hands were shaking, whether from the cold or panic I couldn't tell. I crossed the street without thinking. "You okay?" I asked. She looked up, eyes wide like she was trying to decide if I was trouble or help. "I had my wallet when I got off work," she said. "It had my bus pass, cash, everything. I can't even get home now." I glanced down and saw it, a dark blue wallet lying half hidden in a puddle near the curb. I picked it up, wiped it with my sleeve, and handed it over. She opened it, relief flooding her face when she saw everything still inside. Thank you, she said, voice trembling. You have no idea. That's when I remembered the folded scrap of paper still in my own wallet at home. I pulled it from my jacket pocket. I'd carried it for months, waiting for this moment. 5 words in block letters, just as Mr. Whitaker had written to me. You dropped this when you needed it most. Pay it forward. I slipped it inside before closing her wallet and handing it back. She frowned at the paper, then at me. What's this? She asked. I smiled. Just something someone once gave me. You'll know what to do with it someday. She stared at me for a moment like she wanted to ask more, but instead she tucked the note back in and thanked me again. I watched her climb onto the bus, the paper now hers to keep, and felt something warm settle in my chest. I'd carried those words long enough. It was someone else's turn. That evening, I stopped by Mr. Whitaker's house and told him what happened. He listened without interrupting, then nodded like he'd known all along. Feels different when you hand it off, doesn't it? He said. And it did. Winter crept in quietly that year, the kind where frost edged every mailbox and the morning air bit at your nose. Mr. Whitaker and I kept our Tuesday walks, though they got shorter when the wind picked up, and more often than not, we ended up in his kitchen with coffee steaming between us. I noticed he moved a little slower in January, pausing halfway up his porch steps, leaning on the railing longer than before. One Tuesday, he handed me a small tin box before I even sat down. These are yours now, he said. Inside were neatly folded scraps of paper, each with a name and a short note. Found Mrs. Lang's keys at the park, gave Kevin's kid a ride home after his bike broke, returned wallet to Sam Miller. It was a lifetime's worth of paying it forward, documented like precious recipes. You keep the list going, he said. It's your turn to carry it. By early spring, he told me his daughter was moving him closer to her place 2 towns over. I'm not gone, he said. But you know, a little further from the block. We had one last Saturday breakfast together, bagels and his favorite strawberry jam, and I walked him to his car. He pressed my hand, the kind of grip that says more than words. Don't wait for the world to tell you when to be kind, he said. Just do it before anyone asks. The house felt different after he left, quieter, sure, but also fuller in a strange way, like his lessons had taken up space I didn't know was there. The wallet he'd returned still sat in my drawer, the leather worn, but every time I saw it, I remembered the morning I found it in my mailbox and the man who turned a simple act into something much bigger. A few months later, walking home from the store, I passed the bus stop where I'd returned that woman's wallet. She wasn't there, of course, but someone else was, an older man fumbling with a grocery bag that had split down the middle. Without thinking, I stepped in to help. It's strange how quickly the habit takes hold. So now I'll ask you, when was the last time a stranger's kindness changed your day, and did you pass it on?